The name moose is believed to originate from the name meaning eater of twigs, or he who strips off the bark, in the Algonquin North American Indian family of languages. The name is given to the moose are browsers rather than grazers. Today on Going Deeper, we're going to talk about moose. We're going to talk about some of my favorite experiences. From that moose kiss, and there's actually 2 different moose kisses, to my first publication, which is pretty cool that it got into Reader's Digest. We're going to talk about a crazy story related to my moose in the mist. There's a couple parts to it. We're also going to talk about when I photobombed a photobomb, and that's the photo that ended up in the magazine. Then we're going to look at a set of antlers that have velvet on it. We're also going to look at a moose that got hit by a car, and it was the reason I saw my first wolf. We're going to take a whole dive into moose, and I hope that you enjoy.
Where are the moose? Lies. Lies, I tell you.
Often when I go looking for moose, I don't actually see them. I only see these statues, and these are a pretty good representation, but the coats look a little bit different. Moose have these dewlaps. This is a distinctive hanging bell or dangling fold of skin that you can see from their necks, under their chin, on both males and females. Its true purpose is a mystery. However, researchers believe it helps with thermal regulation. Other theories suggest it's a fitness signal to help with mating selection. So if we can't use this to tell them apart, what can we use? Well, that goes to be antlers. Although males lose their antlers at certain points in the season. Here you can see one with some velvet on. It's early in the season and you can see the rack just starting to grow. I wonder how big this rack will actually end up becoming. It'd be awesome to actually follow a moose for a whole season just to see the change from having a rack to having no rack. These antlers or paddles don't actually come into effect when fighting off a predator. The first line of defense is its sharp hooves, which are capable of mortally wounding a wolf or a bear. The paddles that are found on males are used mainly for fighting and displaying. During the mating season in autumn, bulls will cover a lot of ground looking for a female to mate with. They establish these breeding territories by fighting off other males in their area. The fights are not always fight to the death scenarios, and often a competing male will back away from a fight if the challenger has a more impressive rack. Great paddles are not always the only way to find a mate. Some males have better navigational skills, or just sheer luck, and may come across a female by chance and completely skip an antler combat. One thing that is quite noticeable about a moose other than its antlers is its big, bulbous nose. They can actually be quite distinctive at a distance, especially if it's a female or a male that has shed its antlers. This is normally one of the easiest ways to actually figure out what moose is what. Well, this nose has the ability to smell water across large ranges. The coolest feature to me is that they're the only deer species capable of feeding underwater, and that's because of this long nose is well adapted to feeding from inside the water, as they can actually close it while the face is submerged so that they can get food. Have you ever seen a moose? Leave a comment, share your experience. Imagine being out in the forest and you hear this noise, and as you look to your left, there's this giant monster of a beast just walking. But you can't actually fully see it because these tiny little trees are actually blocking this monster as it walks through the forest. And as it crosses the path, you actually realize how big a moose actually is. No, but honestly, how big is a moose? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Here is a moose skull. This is a baby moose skull. So this is the largest deer skull I've seen, a golf ball, and a Highland cow, just for comparison. So a Highland cow is a large animal, and this skull had been left out, and you can see some weathering growing on it. And here's a moose skull. So this is a fairly large adult skull, although the antlers have velvet. You can see just how big it is and the size of those teeth. Those things are massive. A moose tooth is about the size of a loonie, and there's the hooves that you can see. And to some people, death is sad, but to other people, it can be art. And here's a deer toe. I teamed up with Naturally Healing Heart, and she created these beautiful terrarium memorial things for me, where she used nature and her skills and talent to create these beautiful memorials that I can enjoy and share. But let's get back to some real moose. Moose have commonly been recorded as reaching 1,600 pounds and 6 feet tall. I've actually seen some that are taller than me. Actually, many of them are taller than me. Their antlers alone commonly span more than 80 inches across. Moose are much more agile and speedy than they look. Their enormous bulk sits atop 4 thin legs that can generate huge force both through water and snow. At trot, it's said that they can easily hit 20 miles per hour, or 32 kilometers, and at full gallop, it's said that they can reach 60 kilometers. They've actually made some people's fastest land animals in the world top 10 lists. And they can do these speeds whether in shallow water or a meter of snow across most terrains. So make sure that you don't upset a moose. You can see this one has these tiny little nubbins that are just starting to come out. I wonder if this is a young moose or if it's going to be a mighty big adult moose, right? Don't forget, their antlers drop off every winter and regrow. In 2017, I'd never seen a winter moose. So I head into the park and I get this brief glimpse of this winter moose, and it's this amazing experience. And I've now seen a winter moose with antlers, and I think my day's great. I spend the rest of the day in the park. I'm pretty happy. I've already seen my moose. Don't get me wrong, I wish I got to see it for longer, but I'll take a glimpse of what animal I came to see. And as I'm sort of heading out of the park, there's this group on the side of the road, and I stop, and one of the guys is like, "Jay?" And I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Yeah, you're the guy that took the photo of the moose in the fog." And I'm like, "Yeah." And this guy recognized me. It was so cool. And then the experience I had with that moose earlier that day maybe almost became second, because someone recognized me in the park and they recognized one of my photos. Well, here's the crazy part about that photo is I entered it into a competition, and it was rated a 23 and a 33 out of 35. And I'm not saying it's one or the other, but on a 35-point scale, it shouldn't be 10 points apart. It's won other competitions, and it's actually my most purchased picture, or at least one of them. And, well, I guess everybody has their likes, but I just find it odd to me. Moose actually seem to show up everywhere. From spoon collections? Yeah, I know. Who has a spoon collection nowadays? That's so weird. But yeah, moose end up on spoon collections, and you can find them sometimes in the park.
Now, what's your secret to finding all these great shots?
Be outside. There's no real secret.
Try to be observant.
But do you want to see, like, do you want to actually see, like, it's going to look different in here than what you're doing.
You want to see people like that? That's a good rack it has.
I'm just going to grab my camera, okay, Mom?
Okay, be careful.
Does the little one want to see?
You want to see?
So often a lot of people ask what's the difference between a camera and a cell phone. Well, here's what my camera is seeing, and when we zoom out of this picture, you'll actually see what a cell phone, or what I'll actually say is sort of like the naked eye, right? Having the right camera is awesome. The fact that I was able to build a walking stick that has a monopod built into it and was able to actually use it for other people to see, that was even cooler.
There you go, buddy.
Do you see it? Do you see the moose? Look at there.
That's what we're looking at.
Isn't that cool?
Pretty cool, eh?
Not only did I share the experience with these people, and they were grateful, and I got them to be able to see them closer,
No problem.
but I also shared my YouTube link so that they could be able to see any end video and the results of what I was actually working on. And a few of them have reached out and said that they appreciated it so much, and we've actually become friends. That's pretty cool to randomly meet someone in Algonquin Park, looking at an animal and become friends with them. Actually, I've become friends with quite a few people I've randomly met in Algonquin Park.
You ever seen a moose before?
Yes.
Nice.
I've been pretty fortunate actually to be able to lead some wildlife tours into Algonquin Park for people to have these experiences. As a wildlife photographer, I find it tough to buy gifts for my parents, but I know that my mom loves wildlife, so I promised her, hey, I'd take you to Algonquin Park and I'll show you a moose. And we see maybe one of the coolest things ever. A mom with twin yearlings. Oh, it was a magical moment. And I get a couple pictures, and my mom's response to this amazing experience is, but I really wanted to see one cross the road. Oh, my mom doesn't get it. Well, not only did we see one crossing the road, we actually got to see this one flying. Look closely. It's not even touching the ground. But on that trip, we actually saw 7 moose. And we had a blast. It was awesome. We got to see a mom and a baby crossing the road. That must be so stressful on a mother moose trying to teach their baby moose how to cross a road. I know when I'm a school teacher and I'm trying to teach, that's really tough. But let's focus on the youngest moose I've ever seen. It's referred to as the golden calf because look at the color of it. Well, I got to see this just for a brief moment as it was running towards me. I called this photo the kiss. Oh, I hope that I get to see that experience again. Well, I've also experienced another kiss, and it was these 2 male moose. They walked across the field towards each other, and I was actually hoping that they were going to fight. I didn't really know what was going to happen, so I just sort of watched, and these 2 moose just sort of walked up to each other and sniffed each other. It was actually kind of odd. And then they went on their way. I didn't know that male mooses would kiss and walk off. It was a pretty cool experience. What do you think happened in this moment? So one day I'm driving along the road and I see this big crowd of people and I'm like, oh man, there's got to be something cool. And as I get there, I see this moose in the background. And yeah, it's tough to see, don't worry. Most of the people were struggling to see it, and there were these 2 girls taking a photo beside me, and I photobombed it. And then I showed them the picture that I just took, and they're like, what? What's that? And I was like, that's what we're looking at. And they're like, that's that? And I was like, yeah. So then I showed it to a couple other people, and they were blown away that this moose that was so far away was now so close. And again, being the person I am, I shared my Instagram at this point, and as I didn't have a YouTube channel, with all of the people and was like, hey, send me a message and I'll give you a couple pictures. Just tell me which moose that we saw. And I made a bunch of friends. The two girls that I photobombed, we actually still randomly talk, and I send them pictures every once in a while, because this moose experience actually ended up being maybe one of my favorite moose experiences. And it's not that the moose experience itself was maybe my favorite. It's actually what came because of this moose experience. And it's not from the people I met, but I actually, through talking to some people online, got introduced to somebody, and someone was like, oh, submit a story to us and we'll run it in our newspaper. And I was like, what? You'll run my story with my photos in your newspaper? I can become a published artist or photographer? And I was like, oh, I'm totally down. And I had to wait a couple months for it to happen. But then it happened, and this moose that I photobombed, it ends up being the cover photo for the article. Yeah, that's a pretty cool experience. And yes, for those of you that are wondering, that is a narwhal tusk in my hand. Pretty cool. And my magazine's been all over. Abbey Road. Do you know where Abbey Road is? That's where the Beatles produced their song or their album. And there's a deer hoof knife. If you want to learn more about Damascus and forging, check out my YouTube channel, because there's some pretty cool stuff on my YouTube channel about that. I've also been very fortunate to actually get to display my photography at the Algonquin Park Visitors Center. Yeah, that was a very cool experience. And on one of the days that I was there, I actually got to meet these two little kids who were so excited to meet me that I gave them a free magazine and I signed a couple cards for them. And we had a great time, and I'm now friends with their parents on Facebook. Man, it's so cool, the people that you meet in the park. And on a different trip into the park, I actually got to meet these moose. And you can tell what season it is if you look closely when you look at the moose. In different seasons, their hair looks different. So this is probably, based on the fact that there's a lot of fur or hair falling off this moose, I'm going to say it's probably springtime, right? Spring is the time when the moose don't look as attractive or as beautiful. One thing that I would love to see is a moose swimming or in really deep water. It's said that young moose are strong swimmers within days of birth. Moose have been known to dive up to 20 feet deep to feed on plants at the bottom of a lake. A moose is said to be able to swim twice as fast almost as Michael Phelps, and they can actually swim longer than a person. Part of the reason why you maybe have never seen a moose is that they're typically elusive and shy animals, but there are actually times of years when they are actually particularly hormonal and can be very aggressive or dangerous, just as you would be if you were pumped full of moose testosterone or any kind of testosterone. Bull moose in the fall will often attack anything that moves during this mating season. It's referred to as the rut. And female moose, well, they'll protect their calves and are just as dangerous as a male moose. That's because moose can kick in any direction with their front hooves. Statistically, it's said that they actually attack more humans than bears and wolves combined. However, a moose attack is usually not nearly as serious as a wolf attack. Moose will use their upper lip for grabbing and stripping branches. They can actually stand on their hind legs to reach those top branches, or they'll just pull plants out of the ground. They have a tough tongue and flat molars, which aid them in eating vegetation. Their 4 stomachs digest this food. Their first stomach will break down what they can consume, and then the other 3 will be extracting the nutrients. At certain times of the year, moose feast on fallen apples and other fruits, which slowly are fermenting on the ground. The trace amount of alcohol can sometimes send them a bit loopy. Sports have been a big part of my life ever since I was a kid. And in 2007, I got the opportunity to play for a team called the Meese. It's a traveling hockey team. And we went to Australia to teach and foster the game. That's actually where I met one of my current best friends, Chris. He's the one who helps me with Epic First. Well, while we were in Australia, we got to travel around, meet people. We went into a couple schools and just promoted this game of hockey. A few of us actually went into a gym class and actually taught the class for the day. It was an amazing experience getting to team up with the local kids and share our knowledge. The kids had fun. I'd wonder what they're up to these days. Well, one of the things I'm up to these days is when I sell one of my photo cards, I actually make a donation to the World Wildlife Foundation. And I adopt an animal for a kid. Here are a couple of the moose I've actually adopted.
Okay, Bones, you ready? This time, we're going deeper, but we're gonna do moose.
Hey, is that Jay's Canada Wildlife game? Can I play? Of course you can, but what we must observe is what is happening right now. But we'll come back to that in a second. So to understand the moose, we need to think about what they're doing and how they eat and all of that. And that will help us find where they hang out. It's going to help you with almost every animal. And not only do they eat the top branches, but sometimes they eat the bottom branches too. In the moose world, size counts. Female cows select mates based upon the size of the male's antlers, which reflect their health, as their size and growth is determined by the age and the diet. Year-round, moose snack mostly on leaves, stems, twigs, and the bark of small shrubs. And they eat, and they eat. A fully grown moose can gobble up to 70 pounds of food a day in the summer and 30 in the winter. During mating, bulls will make heavy grunting sounds that can actually be heard up to 500 meters away. One thing with animals that I have always wondered is, why do they pick this branch over that branch or this tree over that tree? If anyone knows, I'd love you to leave it in the comments. So my mother wanted to see a moose at the side of the road, and lots of people see moose crossing the road, but it's actually really dangerous because a moose's eyes don't actually reflect like a deer. So a car will come and just take the legs out, and that body will fly through the windshield, causing severe damage potentially to both of you. But look at how quickly this moose just vanished into the shrubs. Man, that means it must be really hard to find a moose sometimes. So for us to be able to find a moose, we have to learn how to track a moose. And learning about its footprints is where you sort of start. And depending on time of year, it can be easy or hard. In the springtime, when you find a track filled up with water, I find that really cool. Or a snow print. Look at the size of it next to the golf ball. In the fall, when it's actually hard ground, man, you can find some great detail in these footprints. And you can't just look at the footprints. You need to look at the other things that go. And those aren't chocolate. That's actually moose poo. Yeah, those giant balls that are almost the size of a golf ball, that's moose poo, right? Look at how big. It's similar to deer poo, but way bigger. And then if you pay attention to its pee, you'll notice maybe if it's healthy, or maybe you can even tell if it's male or female. I'm not sure about that one. And then you can see these beds where the moose actually lay down. And if you get really lucky, you might actually notice this print. Does anyone know what this print is? Think about it. What could it be? Yep, you're right. It was an antler. And that was probably a huge moose if you look at it. Well, This was a pretty scary moose experience with me. It's springtime, you can tell by the antlers having velvet on it. And this moose crossed the road and was heading one way, and I set up for this awesome shot. Its antlers got stuck and it came right at me. I was terrified. I froze trying to be like a tree, or maybe a rock, I'm not sure. And then it just came through the bush and it just turned right in front of me and it just continued on its way. There is a sad picture coming, so just look away. Unfortunately, I have seen 2 moose that have been hit by cars. This is one of them, and it was actually hit and left on the road, and I'm not sure what the officer was doing, but I assume it got moved because it wasn't there later. The other moose I saw that was hit, I actually ended up seeing it because of a wolf. Yeah, the Algonquin wolf. Whoa, so cool. And what an experience it was seeing this Algonquin wolf. And it looked like the wolf was a little bit sick. So I investigated, and upon investigation, I noticed this dead moose carcass. It was actually there from 3 weeks earlier. I heard about it because I had posted it in a Facebook group. Sometimes social media can be awesome. Well, 3 days later, I went back with my mom and dad to try to find the wolf again. We didn't find the wolf, but we did find this monster, beautiful marble moose, as I call him. Unfortunately, he got hit by a car in 2022, I'm told. I'm sorry I won't get to see you again, marble moose. At the end of mating season, males will shed their antlers. They will just fall from their head, just like deer. I would love to one day actually find a moose antler. I found a few deer antlers in my life, but a moose antler, I think that would be amazing. And the reason that they drop them from their head is so that they can conserve energy for the winter ahead. The heaviest antlers ever recorded have weighed as much as 80 pounds. A new set of antlers will regrow over 3 to 4 months in the spring and be ready for mating season. Here you can see that moose that was hit 3 weeks and 3 days earlier. Look at the change. A moose's antlers actually will improve their hearing by 19%, indicating that the paddles actually serve as an effective parabolic reflector or sound wave reflector. Who knew antlers would do so much? And of course, my first trip back in the springtime, I went and I checked on that moose, and there wasn't much left of it. I wonder what will be the last bone left at this site. How many animals have come here? One time I was in the park, and I spotted a giraffe. That might be my weirdest animal sighting ever. I spotted this really tiny moose, but it was felt and made for me. My friend Anne told me her friend had never seen a moose, and I was like, well, come with me, I'll show you both a moose. And that day we got lucky, and not only did we see one moose, but we actually got to see 2 moose, and her friend was thrilled, and I was happy I was able to keep my word. So cheers to the moose that show up when you need them. Thank you. Sorry, you're gonna need some ID if you want me to share with you. Moose don't have many predators to contend with in the wild, but that doesn't mean they're fully in the clear. In Eurasia, the Siberian tiger is their primary enemy, and one of the only mammals that will attack a healthy adult moose. Well, other than humans, of course. Other predators throughout the northern hemisphere are chiefly gray wolf packs or bear. These animals will typically target either old or sick moose or calves. You wouldn't expect it, but all it takes is one infected bite to do these giants in. Moose actually have smaller menace to worry about: parasites. A brainworm parasite that is contracted from eating snails, and the infective larvae migrate up into the moose's brain and causes neurological damage. It's interesting to think that something as big as a human hair can kill a 1,600-pound moose. Another tiny nuisance that they have to worry about is the tick. Tick infestations depend on the weather and habitat. A harsh winter means less ticks the following years, because when a tick falls off the animal to complete their cycle, and there's still snow on the ground, they die. And he vanished quickly. Here's a spring moose next to a fall moose. The fall moose is drawn by Robert Bateman, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know who he is? And here is the largest collection of my wildlife photography outside of my loft and my mom's collection. And this one is in Vancouver, BC. Yeah, I think that looks like your mom too. I'm not gonna lie, Monty. Your coat's looking amazing on this fall day. I wish you luck this year in the rut. North American moose don't actually migrate further south, as they are unable to sweat to lower their body temperatures, so they are actually most comfortable living in colder climates. Their wide hooves act like snowshoes to help them walk in the snow or in the mud in marshy grounds after the white stuff melts. In March of 2023, I went on my first Canadian cat search, and I did see one. I didn't get a photo of it. I got a picture of its tracks, and I noticed some other tracks. And as I was paying attention to these tracks, I noticed that some of them were moose tracks, and they were pretty crazy. I had seen some wolves or a wolf pack track in the area, but I wonder what was going on with these moose tracks. So I actually set out and was like, I need to follow them because they seem to go on forever. I unfortunately didn't find the wolf pack or the moose, but it was a great adventure following these tracks. Have you ever followed tracks and found an animal? The winter time makes for a great time to be able to do that. What's crazy is I've gone all the way to Thunder Bay looking for moose, when I've actually found them sitting in my own backyard, well, close to my own backyard. This is a moose that was found at the corner of 26 and 22. That's Horseshoe Valley Road for those of you that don't know the area. A moose's eyes are positioned towards either side of their head, similar to a horse. This placement creates large blind spots in front of them, putting moose at a disadvantage in terms of eyesight. They make up for this deficiency with exceptional hearing and sense of smell. I always find it scary when I see a moose close to the road. Did you see the second one? Yeah, they're pretty well camouflaged. When they're out in the open, they're fairly easy to see, but with a car coming, you never know what might happen. Watch how this car spooks them. I guess there's sometimes a disadvantage to having exceptional hearing. So next time you see a moose or you're in moose country, maybe drive a little bit slower and think about the animals, because you'd hate to hit one because they're huge. Plus, driving slower means you might actually see and get to enjoy them. You never know where they'll be. Look at how quickly these two just vanish into fairly thin trees. Wow.
Guess we found a couple moose. Signs not a lie. That you've enjoyed our time going deeper and looking at moose. I hope that you've had some fun learning along with myself and Bones. And please feel free to leave a comment and guide us into what animals you'd like us to talk about in the future.
I hope one day you get to experience seeing a big bull moose from a safe distance, because they are absolutely incredible creatures to watch and enjoy. The way that they just move through the trees and grab whatever they want to eat, it's so fascinating to watch. If you've ever seen a moose, tell me about it. Leave a comment. If you've enjoyed this video, you should check out some of my other videos. Also, please like, share, subscribe, and keep enjoying wildlife. Let me know what animals you'd like to see in future episodes, and I'll do my best to share them with you. I've got some pretty cool ones coming up. The journey continues, and will continue to go deeper. and deeper and learn more about the amazing wildlife that we have here. But until next time, stay safe, have fun, and keep enjoying wildlife.